Battlecry of Freedom by Ngakma Nor'dzin.
Part 2, the slogans. Slogan 27. Train with the strongest afflicted emotion first.
Nyong mong gang che ngong la jang.
When training to ride the mind, work on the greatest difficulty first. It would be hard to say what was the strongest and most important difficulty to work with when I purchased Dee. At first I continued to livery her at the riding school. She still worked for them a little, and I was able to ride her at other times, including in the grade 3 lessons. This became increasingly dissatisfying because the riding school was still in charge of her care and Dee was still subject to their routines. I decided to move her. This evoked a surprising reaction. They told me I couldn't take her away from the riding school. They said she was too dangerous and needed the restrictions of her institutionalized experience. I legally owned her, however, and they had no choice but to allow it. I hired a man with a horse box and turned up at the riding school at 7 a.m. to get her ready. Hardly anyone was about when I led her from the stable and straight into the horse box. No difficulty there. It felt very much like breaking her out of prison. There followed a long period of getting to know each other and her getting used to more freedom and less work. The strongest problem that came up then was realizing that she was in pain and eventually discovering that she had a spinal injury. This had to be addressed first. I would say that the riding school were both correct and incorrect in their assessment of Dee as a dangerous horse. She was powerful, determined, aggressive to other horses and had a strong personality. She was also highly intelligent, willing, sure-footed and respectful if treated with kindness, clear parameters and consistency. I valued Dee for what she was and wanted to work with all her attributes. Even Dee's aggression to other horses was understandable within the context of her view of herself as herd leader. She was not aggressive to me or to other people who handled her. Eventually, even this aggression proved valuable when she became herd leader at the trekking centre.
Trangu Rinpoche says, the first thing to do is determine which disturbing emotion we have the most trouble with. Once we recognize that, then we need to work on it because it is our special weak point.
The first livery stable was good and we made a lot of progress, but Dee was still spending long hours in a stable and was still turned out on her own, in solitary confinement in a small field. I decided to move her again. I looked around the area and found a small and very basic livery yard right on the horse trail. I explained to the owner about Dee's aggression and that she would need to be in a field on her own. Her response was, "That's ridiculous. She's a horse, a herd animal. She'll go out with the others. They'll sort it out." And the horses did sort it out. They had plenty of space to be together or to avoid each other as they wished, and no horse was injured. Dee was suddenly living in a herd of 10 horses. The aggressive behaviour to other horses was dominance, not malice, and as long as the other horses respected her place in the herd, there were no problems. She settled for second mare in that herd. This was the turning point for Dee. She became more content and relaxed, more responsive to ride, peaceful to handle and groom, and many behaviour problems gradually dropped away. We had read by then and they were always close to each other in the field. Her life of institutionalized isolation turned out to have been her greatest affliction.
Tibetan Jinpa says, in general, there are 84,000 afflictions, which can be subsumed into 212 causes. They can be further subsumed into the 6 root and 20 derivative afflictions. These two can be further subsumed into the 5 or 3 poisons, and when subsumed further still, they are reduced to a single affliction, namely self-grasping alone.
Practitioners of mind training must recognize the patterns that arise again and again, and those which are difficult to face and transform. Is it irritation that continually arises? Is it jealousy and an inability to appreciate? Is it a feeling of impoverishment that prevents a generous attitude? It can be painful to look directly at afflictions and honestly acknowledge them, but this is essential for mind training. Transform what is seen and look accurately and deeply. Mind training is wonderfully pragmatic. It addresses the reality of how things actually are. There is no room to hide from this reality, but also no need to fear it. The greatest affliction is also the greatest opportunity.